Good morning, or good evening, councillors and staff. It's been a long day. I now declare the Policy Review Committee meeting open at 6:02. In the absence of the presiding member and the electronic attendance request received from the Deputy Presiding Member of the Policy Review Committee, as per section 5.14b of the Local Government Act 1995, can I ask those committee members present to nominate to act as the presiding member for this particular meeting, being the Policy Review Committee of 7 April 2025. Are there any nominations? Okay. Okay, we have a nomination for Councillor Wright. Councillor Wright, do you accept that nomination?
Yes, CEO, thank you.
Are there any further nominations before I close nominations? There being no further nominations, I declare Councillor Wright the presiding member for this particular meeting. Congratulations, Councillor Wright. So, councillors, just while I've got you in before I hand over to Councillor Wright and he settles himself for the meeting, we did receive 3 requests for electronic attendance. We have one from Councillor Seif, we have one from Councillor Huntley, and we have one from Councillor Coetzee. Now, these requests have all been pre-approved by the Mayor. They were signed off on today, so there's no need to vote for those particular people to come into the meeting. So I have both Councillor Huntley and Councillor Coetzee online now. And the only thing we probably need them to do is read out their declarations when the presiding member's ready to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. I will get those declarations from those council members now that they're here. So item 1, attendances as per the record. And we'll get Councillor Huntley first to read out her declaration. You're on mute, Councillor Huntley.
Me. Yeah.
Thank you.
Me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Councillor Huntley.
Oh, you can. Good. So I've got no means of. There's no buttons on my side of the computer at this stage. So, in accordance with Section 14CA5, I, Jackie Huntley, declare that I can maintain confidentiality whilst attending the council meeting electronically.
Thank you, Councillor Huntley. Councillor Coetzee.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Councillor Coetzee, if you could make your declaration now.
In accordance to Section 14CA5 of the Local Government Regulations 1996, I, Sonnet Coetzee, declare that I can maintain confidentiality while attending this council meeting electronically. I do, however, have a problem with my camera. I will just reboot everything and come in again if that's okay.
Councillor Coetzee, the administration has notified me that unfortunately we can't have no camera on for committee meetings. If you would like to try to rejoin with your camera or maybe change device, you're more than welcome to.
Yes, I'll try that quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. So just notifying the committee that we have lost quorum, so we'll wait for Councillor Coetzee to join and then we'll continue the meeting. And Councillor Seif is having some technical issues with trying to join the meeting. So we'll just wait for that one to come through and then we'll resume the meeting. Councillor Coetzee, do you have your camera? Is it working now?
It says it's working, but I can't see myself there on your board. So I'm going to have to try do this now on my iPhone. Sorry about this, guys.
That's all good. You are our lucky number 7 for quorum, so we'll wait until you have your camera to be able to do the meeting.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Councillor Coetzee. What I will get you to do is if you could read your declaration out as well, please. Councillor Coetzee, if you could unmute yourself and turn your camera on if you are able to do that.
Right. Councillor Coetzee, can you hear us and see us?
I can see you, and can you hear me?
Fabulous. So we'll just get you to read out that declaration again if we can.
No worries. In accordance with Section 14CA of the Local Government Regulations, 1996, I, Sonet Coetzee, declare that I can maintain confidentiality while attending this council meeting electronically.
Beautiful. Thank you, Councillor Coetzee. I will now move on to item 2, apologies and leave of absence. And I know we do have a few today, so I will read them out just so everyone is aware. Councillor Moore is on parental leave. Councillor Berry is away until the 20th of April. Councillor Bedworth is away until the 20th of April. Councillor Rowe is away to the 25th of April. And that is it, I believe, for leave of absences. Item 3, public questions and statement time. We have no members in the gallery. So we'll move on to item 4. There is no minutes to be confirmed, as this is the first meeting of the Policy Committee. Declarations of interest by committee members, including the nature and extent of the interest, are to be made at the commencement of the item to which the interest relates. Declaration of interest forms are to be completed and handed to the Chief Executive Officer. So we'll now go to item 5, reports. And what we will do, just to make up some time, I will see if there is a mover and seconder to move en bloc for the first 2 policies, just to, I guess, save some time. And if any councillors have any concerns, please let me know and we'll pull them out. Councillor Parker? En bloc? Fantastic. So moving Councillor Parker and seconding Councillor Herridge. Councillor Parker, did you want to have any comments? No, thank you. And Councillor Herridge? Fantastic. So just to confirm to the committee, this is moving and seconding 5.1 and 5.2. Councillors, is there any questions for either of those items? No indication. All right, fantastic. Don't think you need the right to reply, Councillor Parker? Fantastic. So all in favour for those? Are we using? Please use the electronic. We've got electronic voting on our systems. No, council support team are just getting it up. Yep, so we should be on block for 5.1 and 5.2. No, we've got nothing on our screens. Oh, okay. I haven't got anything on my screen, so I'll just raise my hand. I'm in support. All right, fantastic. So that's carried 6 to 0. Fantastic. So we'll now move on to, 7, including myself. Apologies. Moving on to item 5.3. Is there, or maybe I should ask, is there any questions for any of the policies? Is there any questions for any of the policies? Which ones and any of those? Councillor Herridge. Do you want me to keep? Okay. All right, so item 5.3, public guidance signage in road reserves policy. Could I have a mover and seconder, and then we'll go to questions. Yep, Councillor Miles is moving, Councillor Herridge is seconding. And any questions on this item? Councillor Herridge.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. Reviewing the marked up version, I did kind of stumble across the numbering across page 36 and page 37. So being that we're trying to be consistent across all of our policies, can we maybe update how those numbering works? It does look a bit messy.
Yep.
You know how we do a 2 and then an I and...
Yep, Director of Assets.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, definitely we can do that. I can check the numbers again.
Councillor Herridge, any follow-up questions? Fantastic. Any other councillors with questions on this item? No? Fantastic. All right, so we'll go to the vote on that item. So all in favour? Fantastic. So that is carried unanimously. We will now go to item 5.4, the leasing policy. Could I grab a mover and seconder for this item? So mover, Councillor Parker, and seconder, Councillor Miles. Any questions on this item? Councillor Herridge.
Can I make a declaration, please?
Yes.
Just to err on the side of caution. With regard to item 5.4 leasing policy, I disclose that I am a member of the Hepburn Centre and it's one of the leasing that we do with the City of Wanneroo. So as a consequence, there may be a perception that my impartiality on the matter may be affected. I declare that I will consider this matter on its merits and vote accordingly.
Thank you, Councillor Herridge, and welcome Councillor Seif to the meeting. If you can hear and see me, if you could make your declaration, please.
Hello? All good? Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Seif.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. So in accordance with section 14CA5, I, Mansef, declare that I can maintain confidentiality whilst attending this meeting electronically.
Fantastic. Thank you, Councillor Seif. And we are just on policy 5.4 at the moment. All right, so we had a declaration from Councillor Herridge. Did we have any questions on this item 5.4? Councillor Miles?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My only question was, obviously, as part of the financial implications as well. As it says in your financial implications of the report proper, it indicates obviously there's going to be more work, and there needs to obviously we've got to make sure our asset management is also up to date, because we're going to start managing these properties. My question is to administration: should we then start looking at having a property management? I know you're property management, but a property manager, just as somebody would have when they have a rental, they get a 6-monthly visit, sites checked, just to make sure that our buildings are being held up to the standard that we require them to be.
Yeah, Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Chair. We already do that. We perform property inspections at least annually with our properties. That includes even ground leases. What we are probably moving towards is a broader relationship building approach beyond that with our tenants as well. So the idea would be inspecting, as I say, at least annually, but also then having I suppose for want of a better term, a catch-up meeting with our tenants as well to help forward plan, because what we're seeing increasingly is tenants are looking for external funding and various other things. So we're starting to look at how we can help support them build in that way as well. But in terms of property management, essentially it's already happening. The reference in the financial implications is really just to be clear, it's something we will continue to monitor. So as more leases move to the city having a greater role in maintenance, obviously the operational impact may change, and that will be a point to consider at that time.
Yes, Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just on that, and understand that, and I understand that you're part of obviously leasing and rentals and all of that to everybody but the city itself. So like our libraries, our community centres, you don't manage those, they're managed by another team, which I guess what I'm trying to get at is we don't seem to have a consistency maybe to the CEO between all of our buildings. So we obviously have a certain policy within this team, but other teams don't have that same consistency. So how can we make that work so all of our buildings reflect that same level of care?
CEO.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question. I think what you're asking for is, at the moment we have quite a clear delineation between our external and community groups and the way that we manage those leases. Yet we don't have the same, I guess, approach when we're, I guess, occupying a building ourselves. And what your question is should we have a more consistent approach? I haven't really given that a lot of consideration, so I might take that away and have a discussion with the director and manager about that approach moving forward. One thing that I would note is, potentially as the city looks to expand its property portfolio, and depending on the complexity of the different lease arrangements that we take on, there may be a catalyst or a decision that council makes at some point in time which will lead us to need to go and have an external specialised property manager, depending upon what the property portfolio looks like longer term.
Councillor Miles, any follow-up questions? Fantastic. Any other councillors with questions? Director of Assets.
So not a question, just a comment to further what CEO had explained. We do have our building maintenance team inspect the buildings which we have under our control. So we'll have our staff will inspect those buildings, and also our building maintenance contractors, statutory inspection and otherwise. So there are scheduled inspections undertaken to make sure the services that we provide and the maintenance of building is up to scratch.
Thank you, Director Singh. Is there any further questions? No? Yep, Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As Mr. Singh has commented on other properties, does that mean that our asset maintenance, which I'm not sure where is done the same as, so we're having annual inspections of all of our properties, so we do bring them or make any repairs and maintenance obviously as we go, especially when it's damaged. So are you saying, Mr. Singh, that you have the same level of review, I guess, or inspection as property services team.
Director Singh.
Thank you, Chair. Inspections may not be documented the way our property lease inspections are undertaken. However, our building maintenance teams are more often at those buildings, and our contractors are visiting. Just as an example, for our mechanical services contractor will visit, depending upon which site it is, every 3 months or 6 months or annual inspection, and they'll provide us a report after each inspection on the state of affairs of that mechanical infrastructure. Similarly, our electrical contractors, similarly plumbing, our own staff will go there and do our inspections for other aspects of the building, such as floor covering, window treatments, and things like that. We also get reports from other contractors who visit site for the cleaning contractors. If they notice something, they will also report that to us, and we will then attend to any maintenance items, either identified by our teams or through the contractors.
Councillor Miles, any further questions? No, no problem. Anyone online? Got no indication. So I'll go to the mover, Councillor Parker. Did you want to speak to the item at all?
No, thank you, Mr Chair.
Thank you. And the seconder, Councillor Miles. Thank you. So we'll now go to the vote on that item. The recommendation is on page 54. Councillor Coetzee. Thank you. So that is carried unanimously. So we will now go to item 5.5, which is the community groups policy and volunteering policy. So I'll just go to a mover and seconder before we go to questions. Could I have a mover for this item? Councillor Smith, and a seconder, Councillor Herridge. Beautiful. And is there any questions on this item? Councillor Smith?
I have a few questions about the wording. They're more grammatical in sense. I don't know if it's I email them through later or if I bring them up now. What would you prefer, Chair?
Is there any that are major issues? Or are they formatting, spelling?
It's actual word construction in the sentence.
If you feel free, if you feel like they're relevant to bring up while everyone's here.
Yeah, so page 98 in section 5 implications. 1.1, it says a value to contribution of all people, just grammatically. I think that can be looked at.
Yep, thank you. The administration's taken note of that page and reference.
I've got two more for you. Page 99, halfway down, the role of community groups is to, number 1, build connections with other community groups. I'm not sure if community groups was meant to say community members or if it just meant other groups. So that's just a question of clarification on that one. Could be groups and members, but members made more sense to me in my head.
Did the Director of Community in Place want to add anything to that?
Thank you, Chair and Councillor. I do have comment. However, I've got the Acting Manager of Community Development, Ms Searles, in the room, and through yourself, Chair, I'd like to defer to her to answer the question.
Through the Chair, thank you. Yes, it is intended to be community groups, but as part of community groups, obviously the members of the groups are part of that. So our aim is for community group A to talk and liaise with community group B, so they're kind of sharing knowledge and information across them all.
Any further questions, Councillor Smith?
Got one more. Page 112, it just says the role of a city volunteers is. So that's all.
it's been brought to my attention by the CEO and the manager, the General Counsel, that obviously this committee has delegated authority, so any changes that we approve tonight will be live on the website and for the public to see for our policies. So if we do want to clarify or change any wording, it needs to be done at this committee. So I'm happy to take any recommendations from councillors, or if you'd like to leave the administration to propose any particular wording, just let me know. Councillor Smith, did you have another suggestion for your second one? I know your first one was a spelling error.
The second one I brought up was the member questions, which was fine.
Yep.
So I'll just work backwards. So the role of a city volunteer is, so just removing the S on that one as that one, and page 9.
So this is page 112 of our agenda.
Yeah.
So just removing the letter S.
Yeah.
So can I just ask us for a point of clarification? Are you requesting that Councillor Smith does this by an amendment?
Yep, so it can be done by an amendment, or it can be done through the consent of the mover and seconder, which in this case would be Councillor Smith and Councillor Herridge. Yep, so we'll move it as amended, which will be on page 112, removing the letters S. So it will read, the role of a city volunteer is to. Yep, fantastic. And what was the other one, Councillor Smith?
On page 98, 1.1, value to contribution of all people. So in terms, that's referring to the strategic community plan, and I don't have that exactly in front of me, but I think the essence of it is valuing the contribution of all people, if that makes sense, or if happy to take advice from administration if they think it should be otherwise.
Yep, Director of Community in Place.
Thank you, Chair and Councillor. That's fine. I'll just read that back to you. So on page 98, under 5 implications, 1.1 to read, value the contribution of all people.
Councillor Smith, happy with that?
Very happy, thank you.
All right, fantastic. So those two changes will be the as amended, and the administration has taken note of those changes. I had Councillor Herridge first, then Councillor Miles.
Thank you, Chair. I just had one similar as well on page 98, the key definition for incorporation. It states here an incorporation is a group of people who come together to form groups. I'm not sure if that's actually correct. I know that this has been added in because of the financial part with accepting grants and what have you. But an incorporation, I looked up, establishes a legal identity for a group or organisation. So I'm not sure if we've done the right definition there, if I can check.
General Counsel will respond.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, we are referring there to the Associations Incorporation Act, so we'd have to take the definition of incorporation under that Act. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Herridge. Any other questions? No? So Councillor Smith and Councillor Herridge, you're happy with the changes that we've made to those 2 points? Yep. And is all councillors of the committee understanding of what those changes are? Yep. Online? Yep, fantastic. So we'll go to the mover of that item if there's no further questions. Councillor Miles.
Must be that chair. My question is on page 103, Chair. Under the dispute resolution, bearing in mind a dispute that we've dealt with recently, does this cover off from the General Counsel's point of view of being able to have a volunteer excused from a project or from being part of the city's volunteering?
General Counsel.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Miles. Yeah, so in the event of a dispute, it would go initially to the Director of Community in Place. If the volunteering in question was not happy with the decision, then it would go to the Chief Executive Officer, and then the Chief, if there's no consensus there, then obviously it can come to Council for a decision.
Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you. So should it not be referring to the fact that if you're not happy with the ruling from the CEO that you do have the right to go to council? Should that not then be in that dispute section?
General Counsel.
Thank you. Just talking to the CEO. So the previous one obviously came to council because there was a provision under the local law to allow the matter to come to council for a decision. So this one would end at the CEO. There wouldn't be a further way to look at the decision again, unless it was written specifically. But usually decisions would stop at the CEO.
Any other questions on this item? Anyone online? No indication. So I will go to Councillor Smith as the mover. Did you want to speak to the item at all? No indication. And Councillor Herridge? Yes?
Just a quick one if I can. Being that this is a doubled up item and we've got another couple as well, just if we're making amendments, it's going to make it a little bit messy. Can we maybe request from admin to only put one policy per item in case we do make amendments to make it a lot easier? We've got 17 policies to deal with tonight, but only 11 items. So it could make it messy and difficult.
Mr. CEO?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Herridge, and through the chair. When we put together the agenda, obviously this was our first meeting and we had a couple of different approaches throughout the business. And I think taking those comments on board, you know, we probably need to sit down and say one item per policy. Otherwise, it is going to make it quite challenging when we are making amendments like this.
Thank you. There's no other questions. Councillor Herridge, did you want to... No. Fantastic. So we will go to the vote on that, and the recommendation is on page 92. Yep. Oh, sorry, we've got Councillor Seif who's got a question.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. Just to admin, would they consider the scope of this policy to be administrative or operational? So when we're talking about determining whether it stops at the CEO or comes to council, in my view, this is operational. I just want to get admin's view on that, please.
Mr. CEO?
Thank you, Chair. I think I did whisper the Chair. I'm not quite sure how to answer that one, Councillor Seif. I'm not quite sure. Could you please repeat your question? You're talking about the intent of the policy, whether it's operational or not. Is that correct? Well, I think by its very nature.
Yeah, I understand that it's. I understand council's responsibility to help define the policy, but the implementation then of the policy in terms of dealing with community groups and. Would that not be operational?
Thank you, Councillor Seif. Through the Chair, yes, the implementation of the policy is generally very operational, and what we're doing is we're operating under Council's, I guess, broad parameters. So, yeah, the finer details in its implementation becomes a very operational matter, yes.
Thank you, Councillor Seif. If there's no other questions, we will go to the vote on page 92 as amended with those changes from Councillor Herridge and Councillor Smith. Yep. Councillor Seif, that's a yes. You do have your card back to front. Beautiful, thanks. Fantastic, so that's carried unanimously. So we will go to item 5.6, which is the Circuses and Performing Animals Policy and Student Citizenship Award Policy. and the recommendation is on page 120. So I will grab a mover and seconder first. Do I have a mover? Yep, Councillor Parker. And a seconder? Yep, Councillor Miles. And any questions from the committee at all? Yep, Councillor Miles.
I'm happy with the circus and performing animals policy, but I did have some questions to do with the citizenship award. One is, I need to go back to it. What I was looking at was with the awards that are issued in the policy doesn't dictate what sort of award or what is being presented to the students. I just wanted to know where that resides, if it shouldn't be in this policy.
Director of Community in Place.
Thank you, Councillor. And through the chair, I am aware on page 131 that it does outline the criteria for those awards, and that those awards there, the names of those awards are also included. Perhaps I could seek some clarification if there's anything additional upon that you're after.
Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Ms Davids, what it is, obviously under 6.3, it says presentation of awards, and obviously it dictates that the students that are being given the award obviously is given by a council member or a nominee, but there's nothing in this report that I could find to say what we're giving as an award. At the moment, we give a piece of paper in a frame and a medal. I'm just wondering, how did that come about, and why would that not be in the actual policy on what we should be giving out? Bearing in mind the council's been doing the same thing since 1999, I would have thought we would have wanted to update what we are giving out. That's what I'm trying to establish.
Director.
Thank you, Councillor. And through the chair, that is correct. It is a certificate. It's a framed certificate. That is the award. And it has been this way, as you can see, as this policy has been in place since 2006. So we can willingly take any direction from Council if you'd like us to refer it back and innovate.
Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I wouldn't mind that this one. Can we just take this one out and send it back to administration to come back at another meeting? Because the other reason too, Chair, it was something I did ask a few years ago, that once we've given an award to a student or students at all of the schools, it's never recorded anywhere historically, and maybe it should be as part of our museum library service as well. So I would like to see a little bit further work go on what we're presenting, and maybe make it a little bit more meaningful. So if we can take this out, whatever process we have to do to make that, that's good.
So I've received some information from the administration. The best approach that's been provided is to split the recommendation, and then there will need to be a procedural motion moved from the floor to defer, to send back for more information. And Director Davis has some more information to provide us.
Thank you, Chair. And in response to that, administration made a decision to put this policy through because it had met its renewal date for review. But I believe you will note that when we review the awards and ceremonies policy in a couple of months, that this policy will be rolled up and reviewed again at that time, if that is assisting your decision making on that amendment.
Councillor Smith with a question.
Yes, thank you. So it's a question in the section of consultation in the report on page 119. So it says consultation has been undertaken with relevant external stakeholders and all policies have been reviewed as per City's policies and procedure review process. I've made comment a few times before about sometimes lacking specificity about who's been consulted. So, for example, for the Student Citizenship Award policy, were schools consulted with or not? That would be something that would be of interest to me as well about in this process. So if this is coming back to us and other things looked at, could that section be looked at too, please? Thank you.
Yep, that looks like it's been taken on notice by administration. Councillor Herridge.
Thank you, Chair. Just further on from Councillor Miles' question, is there a management procedure that's behind this policy to help and aid with the frame and the awards that are given? Might actually help us.
Yep, Director of Community in Place.
Thank you, Councillor. Through the chair, there is a management procedure for this that is that guides the operations of the staff.
Thank you. Is there any other questions from anyone in the committee? Got no indication. Councillor Miles, were you wanting to split the recommendation?
Yes, I would like, I don't know who, I think it was Councillor Parker that moved it. I would like it that if we could send number 2 back for further information, but then just go on and deal with number 1. So are you wanting an amendment or are you asking Councillor Parker to agree with that?
Okay. Well, as the presiding member, I'm happy to split the recommendation. However, is Councillor Parker and Councillor Miles happy to move and second both of those split recommendations? Councillor Parker?
Sorry, the director mentioned something about the Student Citizenship Award policy in another policy. Would that not cover this in a management procedure in another policy, or are we going to? So, in essence, are we going to have 2 separate policies, or two separate policies covering one item? I'm sorry, did I misunderstand?
Yep, Director of Community in Place.
Thank you, Councillor. And through the chair, without an endorsement of council, what administration has been doing some preliminary desktop research around is that this particular policy, the Student Citizenship Award policy, would be reviewed holistically when additional policies such as the Citizenships and Awards policy of council is reviewed at a later date, and look for any opportunity to streamline those processes under one policy.
So then a follow-up question to that,
Councillor
please.
Parker.
Would it then not be beneficial to actually do that and just have it under one policy? Otherwise, it could just be a crossover. So then would this one be superfluous if we did change this one now?
Yep, Ms Davies.
And continuing through the chair, thank you, Councillor, that the reason this policy is in front of you today is because it is up for review. It's met its due date.
Councillor Parker, so you're happy to split that recommendation to send the Student Citizenship Award policy back?
Yes, very happy to split it. I was just thinking, well, yeah.
No problems. I just needed your consent
Cool.
with that one.
Yes, we'll do that. We'll do that.
Fantastic.
Cool, thank you.
All right, so the first recommendation is that the Policy Review Committee approves the revised circuses and performing animals policy as shown in attachment 2, and the mover is Councillor Parker and the seconder is Councillor Miles. Is there any further questions before we go to the vote on that item? I have no indication, so we will go to the vote on that first recommendation. Fantastic. So that is carried unanimously. And then the second recommendation, which Councillor Miles, do you have some proposed wording for that particular recommendation?
Well, I'm not sure whether I can move anything because I'm a seconder of the substantive.
Sorry, Councillor Parker as the mover. Some simple wording would be to...
I think we were just
Be a
referring.
procedural motion, sorry, Councillor Miles.
Was that Councillor Herridge?
Thank you, Councillor Herridge.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to propose a procedural for the second half of that recommendation that we've split. Goes back to a forum, next policy review, some guidance from admin on where they'd like to put it.
Director of Community in Place, does the administration have any preference over a proposal method you would like to see to provide any guidance to council?
Happy for it to come back to the next policy committee though.
Next policy committee? Okay, so there's a procedural motion on the floor to defer this item to the next policy review committee. And we have a seconder for that procedural motion from Councillor Huntley for further information. So we'll go straight to the vote. And who are we waiting on? There we go. So we've got 8, so that's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. So we will now go to item 5.7. Just noting in this one there is 4 local planning policies in this item. And the recommendation is on page 138. So I will go for a mover and seconder first before questions. Yep, Councillor Herridge is moving and a seconder. Councillor Miles. Any questions from the... sorry, I've got Director Dixon who's wanting to provide some information first.
Sorry, Chair, and through you, in the spirit of sharing typographical errors, on page 161 and 165, under the heading Maximum Floor Areas, we have a new land use category of mixed SU areas, which is only for people by the name of Sue who can live in those areas. So that needs to be changed to use on both pages 161 and 165.
So with the consent of the mover and seconder, Councillor Herridge and Councillor Miles, are you happy to incorporate that? Yep, Councillor Herridge.
Can I add one more? Thanks, Chair. I've just realised looking through them, both item 411 and 427 refer to DPLH. Is that still the same from all of the shake-up, or is that changed from the last
As far
election?
as I'm aware, it's not changed, so it's still the same.
Thank you. Is there any other questions from the committee at all in regards to any of the local... Yep, Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On page 134, the LPP 1.1 conservation reserves, the only issue I have a real big issue with, I guess, as a councillor, is the fact it says that we're not going to, well, basically we're not going to do any mitigation unless that area is an extreme risk in accordance with the city's bushfire risk management plan framework. I am concerned what we see as an extreme risk, bearing in mind what's just happened in Maritinup, and the conservation reserves were actually the worst areas to go up. So I'm not happy that extreme is the way we're going to rate how we're going to look after those reserves. So can I get some clarification on that?
Director of Community in Place, I believe, is emergency management under Community in Place portfolio.
Thank you, Chair. My apologies. Would you please repeat the question for me?
Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you. Under the conservation and I'll go back to the page I was on, which is 134, down the bottom under detail, LPP 1.1 conservation reserves, it states that the management measures relating to bushfire protection are only to occur when the risk goes to extreme. So when the area has obviously got a very high load of fuel, that's when we're going to deal with it. I'm not sure whether that should be a policy of this city's, bearing in mind what's just happened with Meridian.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor, for repeating your question. The current process for bushfire mitigation out of the 20 to 23 projects that the City can currently complete within the provided funding does only address the extreme rated areas.
Councillor Miles?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I guess my question is where some of these conservation areas are, they are close to homes. I know in Mindari, I know in Quinns, as well as in Tapping and the like. So I'm not sure whether we should accept that extreme is our bushfire risk for these conservation reserves. So is it then, so my question would need to be to the Director, should we be looking at the management plan to understand how this is being determined before we go further and place that in a policy that's public facing?
Director of Community in Place.
Thank you, Chair and Councillor. So the Bushfire Risk Management Plan annual review is due to be in front of Council in the coming months. However, I do note that the items that you noted being population proximity as well as loading are the criteria that inform the extreme risk rating.
Councillor Miles, any further questions?
Yeah, I guess for me, Chair, I'm not liking this policy layout at all, without understanding all of it, because I do know that Councillor Huntley and myself and yourself and other councillors were very much involved, and we all got told it was our conservation areas that assisted that fire to get out of control. So I'm not happy with this policy the way it is. So is it a policy, is it before us in this document because its time is up and it needs reviewing, or should we, or can we take it out and have another look on its own at the next meeting?
I'll go to Director Dixon first, who has some comments, and then I'll go through to Councillor Herridge.
Through you, Chair, that the policy is due for review. So if Council has concerns, acknowledge that the policy, it's functioning okay at the moment, apart from the issue that perhaps Council's raised this evening. I'd be comfortable if Council wishes to send the item, the policy, back for further consideration around the city's bushfire risk management plan and the issues that has been identified, if that's what Council wishes to do. The policy, apart from that, is working fine as it is.
So Councillor Miles, from the administration, there is an available option where the committee can adopt the policy as is, and then you could request an amendment to, I guess, do a workshop. So any of the policies tonight that require further workshopping, there could be another forum or something organised for further workshopping with councillors and then bringing it back to the committee, if that is of interest. Councillor, I had Councillor Huntley and then Councillor Herridge.
The question is, the way this is written on that LP11 conservation reserves, it actually does state local structure plans are required to meet in designated POS for conservation, including condition of vegetation viability and proposed minimum spatial area and configuration of such areas. Second, notes that all management measures relating to bushfire protection are only to occur when the risk posed from the reserve is rated as extreme. Now, does that mean we don't do anything in regard to watering or clearing an area unless the measure turns extreme? I'm just wondering how. There must obviously be another guideline for this policy as to the bushfire risk. But the fires went cataclysmic because it was so dry and because none of the floor was removed. So if we stick with what it says in here, it actually says we're going to do nothing unless the fire risk is extreme. Is that correct?
Director of Community in Place.
Thank you, Chair. And before my director may like to also provide comment, that is correct. But I am also on advice that our mitigation program is considered exemplary, as has been fed back to us from DFES as well.
Councillor Huntley, any follow-up questions?
Yeah. Despite DFES saying it's exemplary, the fact is it went cataclysmic, and it went cataclysmic in nearly every single dry conservation area we have, which are all in residential areas. So Tapping, Banksia Grove, wherever the other ones were, on Lenore. And I think that really has raised an issue that this is not relevant. We cannot wait till things go extreme before we start looking at these conservation areas. They're fenced, so animals can't get out of these if they're in there, and it creates a real issue. I think we need to look at these prior to it becoming extreme. In fact, literally as soon as really the spring starts, as to how we mitigate with leaf litter inside of these areas, and whether we actually supply some form of water. So if we do get extreme, we can actually water these areas either with a jet or some form of ability to just dampen these down.
Thank you, Councillor Huntley. The Director of Planning and Sustainability has a response.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So I'd just like to clarify that the purpose of this policy is to identify criteria around the designation of conservation reserves. That's the sole purpose of this policy. The issues that have been raised by Councillor Miles and Councillor Huntley relate to our bushfire risk management plan framework, which, as my colleague has already mentioned, is due for review. One option that Council may wish to consider is to adopt the policy as is, noting that if there is a change to the bushfire management plan framework, that we can then follow that up at the same time, once that framework has been reviewed, to amend the policy with regard to this particular provision within the local planning policy itself. That way, because this issue isn't to do with the policy per se, this issue that's been raised is to do with the city's approach to management of fire risk through that framework. That's just a suggestion for Council's consideration.
Thank you, Director Dixon. I had a acknowledgement from Councillor Herridge there that may have been the point she was going to bring up. Did you have any questions? I had you next on the list, and then Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair. Just to reiterate, I was thinking along those lines, being that we're looking at a policy and what we're discussing is outside of that. So at a bigger question, can we actually have that come back and we'll discuss that? So maybe the risk register as well, if it appears on there. But certainly for the management plan, maybe it's timely that we actually review that so we're not at the extreme and we actually bring that down to a level that we think is more appropriate.
Mr. CEO?
I believe I've just got a message here to say that that whole approach is coming to council in May.
Councillor Parker.
No, the question was asked and answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you. And I did hear Mr Dixon's explanation, and I understand it's a local planning policy 1.1. So why does it have that item? Why does it have that sentence in a local planning policy when, as you stated, that it's about bushfire management? Why is that in that particular document?
Yep, Director.
I think it's just because it's related to a similar issue, it's just there for reference. I think the key document in this instance is the Bushfire Management Plan framework. If council were mindful or concerned about that, there's quite happy for 5.2 to be removed because the issue is in relation to the Bushfire Management Plan itself. It's just, I suppose it's a belt and braces approach, so that's often when policies and guidelines are related to the same issue, we like to make sure that there's a reference to those documents. But if it's concerning council, happy for that to be removed.
Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to amend it that we remove that item because that is part of our bushfire management, which is a totally different area of this business and probably shouldn't be referenced in here at all. So can we just delete that part? What page was you looking at, Mr Dixon?
Through you, so it's referenced in the in each of the attachments on attachments 1, 2 and 3, but we can remove, because it's not part of the proposed changes that administration's making, we could remove provision 5.2 from each of those attachments, if that's what council wishes.
So, Councillor Miles, what page are we looking at on the clean version, so attachment 3?
Be simpler.
Okay, so I have it on page 146, Chair, 5.2, all management measures relating to the bushfire protection. I don't think that should be in here.
So we just need the blessing of Councillor Herridge. If you're happy with that approach, if you're not, please let me know. Councillor Herridge.
Can we just check which pages it is across all three that we're changing to make sure that we've all got it correct? So I believe it's 146 that you're
So page 146 and what clause, sorry, Councillor Miles?
It's 5.2 on all the documents. So it's actually clause 5.2 in all of those documents, which it refers to the bushfire management, which obviously comes under a different policy. And going to what we said to earlier, we're trying to rationalise some of these policies.
So just on page, General Counsel has indicated on page 143, there is a reference to the clause that Councillor Miles is talking about, and also on page 146. I'll go to Councillor Smith, and then is it about the point that we're talking about now? Yep, Councillor Smith.
I'd just love to hear the General Counsel weigh in, just to hear the confirmation from her if that is all good. Thank you.
General Counsel. Yeah, the administration's comment on taking that clause out, 5.2.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. You can take that clause out if it's referenced in other documentation across the city, and you can make a change to obviously 1A just to say that you remove clause 5.2 from each of the three policy types.
Does the Director have any further information to add on administration's view? No. Councillor Huntley, you're indicating a red card. I'm unsure what that red card is. Is that a question or is that a declaration or a point of order?
It's basically an amendment, procedural motion or a point of order. But in this case, I think there might be a simpler way than to remove those documents, because obviously this has to refer to them at some point. Just to suggest that we look at the wording and just remove. So we've got bushfire protection are only to occur when the risk posed from the reserve is rated as extreme. If we remove that and say notes that all management measures in accordance with the city's bushfire risk management framework, we could just pull that, the rated extreme out, and then leave those, the bushfire management plan in, the framework in. I don't know whether that will make it easier, just to change that sentence.
Thank you, Councillor Huntley, for the suggestion. I'll go back to Councillor Miles as he was proposing the amendment. What would you like the approach to be? Are you happy to remove clause 5.2? Are you happy to take Councillor Huntley's suggestion?
I'm happy to take the clause 5.2 out because, as per administration's advice, that it's actually covered under our bushfire mitigation policy anyway.
And Councillor Herridge, as the mover, are you happy with that approach? If not, we can go to an amendment.
If General Counsel thinks it's okay, I think it's okay.
Okay, so we'll take that as consent from the mover and seconder. So incorporated, it will be, sorry, councillors, on page 138, the recommendation will be for clause... no, in the actual recommendation. So it would be clause 1A, subject to taking out clause 5.2 in the policy. Does every councillor in the committee understand what Councillor Huntley?
Yes. That would then leave the word rated as extreme in this document, wouldn't it?
No, Councillor Huntley. So item 5.2 is being removed from the policy entirely. So there will be no reference.
So that whole section will go.
Correct.
So what will replace conservation reserves then?
So
that would have to be rewritten this as a policy on them.
Sorry, Councillor, you're looking at 5.3. We are on...
So where we're looking at page 134, that's where that word extreme comes into play. If that's not removed, then this will still refer to the word extreme before we take any action.
Sorry, Councillor Huntley, you're referring to the administration's report. Council is not adopting the administration's report, we're adopting the attachment. So along that the clause is removed from the attachment, that will be what Council is endorsing. So you're referring to attachment 3 on page 145, and the reference is brought up on page 146.
Oh, yeah, okay, no worries.
Okay, so now that's been clarified. So that has been as amended, or moving as amended. So I will go to Councillor Herridge if you have any comments. No? And Councillor Miles? No? Any further questions before we go to voting? No? So we will go straight to the vote for that item now. So that is, the recommendation is on page 138. That is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. So item 5.8, which is on page 174, the council support has circulated a replacement page in your packs, and that is a replacement page of 189. So, General Counsel, you want to speak to that?
Thank you. Just to talk to the replacement pages. So the replacement pages relate to the change in reference to the council services and the governance and legal team. So we're now part of the Office of the Chief Executive Officer, and the subunit will be legal and governance services across all 4 of those policies.
Thank you, Ms. Coles. So I'll grab a mover and seconder for item 5.8, and then we will go to questions from the committee. So could I have a mover and seconder for that item? Councillor Parker as a mover and Councillor Herridge as a seconder. Is there any questions from the committee at all? Councillor Herridge?
Thank you, Chair. Just one. I did pick up through the report, and I wasn't quite sure whether it was also in the actual attachments. We refer to the city's governance framework. Now, that is an internal document. I just wanted to check. It's referred to, well, the actual operational document is the corporate governance framework, if I'm correct.
Which page are you on, Councillor Herridge?
On page 174, it does mention it down the bottom. So I just wanted, one, to make sure that when we're reading these, we're referring back to something that we either have or are aware that it's an operational document, because we don't actually have a governance framework ourselves.
General Counsel?
From memory.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Herridge. That should refer to the city's corporate governance framework.
Thank you, Councillor Herridge. Do you have any follow-up questions? No. Is there any other committee members that have a question on the integrity policy? No. Fantastic. So the recommendation is on page 175, and it is to accept renaming of the policy, and 2, to adopt the revised integrity policy as shown in attachment 3. And the mover is Councillor Parker. Did you have any comments as the mover?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. And Councillor Herridge is the seconder. Thank you. If there's no other questions, we'll go to the vote on that item. So that item has been carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move to item 5.9, the execution of documents policy, and that starts on page 196. We'll go to a mover and seconder before questions. Could I have a mover for this item, please? Councillor Parker. And a seconder? Councillor Smith. And any questions on this item from the committee? Councillor Herridge.
Thank you, Chair. This one I did find quite difficult to get my head around, so I'm hopefully not the only one. The report seemed to jump across a lot. I've written down a lot of notes, so if you bear with me for a second. The governance framework I did pick up in here, I think, as well. I think it was this one that we've referred to, and we need to take it out. Anything that's an operational item, I think it was in this one.
Which page are you referring to, Councillor Herridge?
I've made too many notes. Did anyone else have any questions?
Did anyone else have any questions while Councillor Herridge is finding that particular page? There's no indication. I did have a question. I had 2 questions from myself, and I did write them in over the weekend. One of them was on page 211 in regards to state or Commonwealth funding agreements. So although that this could be signed off by the CEO or director, there was nothing in there that stops, I guess, the administration from approving that if it affects the timing. So, for example, if the department wants us to deliver within a certain time frame that may not align with the current council budget or LTFP due to the timing of what they want to see for that project. And the response from the administration was that could be investigated as part of the review for the management procedure. I guess the only concern that I had with that is there's no council oversight in terms of if that is approved under the administration through the management procedure. So is there any way that that can be transparent to council if any of those do significantly divert away from council endorsed LTFPs, for example? Would that be a council recommendation that comes back to align that with the funding agreement? General Counsel.
Thank you for the question. Yes, we can, if in the management procedure, we can put details in there to say that if the funding agreement is requesting a change to the project schedule or requires some changes that the city are not happy with, then that can come forward to council. Usually in those circumstances, we do enter into negotiations with the state government or federal government agencies and explain the situation, and we have amended milestones and that in agreements previously.
Yep, CEO.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to think about this practically and the way that it sort of happens in operation. It's very rare that you would get a funding application out of the blue for, continuing years, unless it was something, a continuing program through the state or federal government. So typically what you're going to see is projects like the Alkimos Arc, where councillors made a series of decisions through the LTFP, through the council budget, then essentially, endorsing and then subsequently the execution of the document. So I can't think of too many instances where you'd be going beyond that. You wouldn't just be receiving a document and saying, I'll execute this outside of, I guess, a broader approach to a project or initiative. It sits reasonably comfortably with me at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. We'll go back to Councillor Herridge. Did you manage to find what you were looking for?
I did, and I will leave that question to the next item. It kind of refers to everything, but that's where I found it, so that's where I'll leave it. I did have one other question though. The two categories that we've now gone down to, which is category 1 and 2, looking on the clean policy, which is on page 218 and 219, I was just wondering whether the register of appointments actually refers well enough to those two categories, because to me it's not quite, you can't quite work out which one's which. Does it need to be, or am I overthinking it?
General Counsel.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. Yeah, we can make, clarify, put another part of that table in and clarify whether it's a category 1 or 2 along the side, just to clarify that, if you're happy to make that change.
Yep, so just following previous procedure, so the mover is Councillor Parker, and the seconder is Councillor Smith. Are you happy for the administration to add in that extra column in on page 219 and 220 for category 1 and category 2 documents?
Yes, very.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Councillor Smith. Fantastic. So that will be as amended as well, and the administration has taken notes on that. Any other questions from other committee members? No indication. So the recommendation is on page 200, as shown in attachment 4 as amended with those changes. Is all councillors aware of what they are voting on? Fantastic. So we will go to, Councillor Parker, did you have any comments? No. And Councillor Smith? Fantastic. So we will go to the vote on that item. So that is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. So item 5.10, the bereavement recognition policy, which starts on page 223, and the recommendation is on page 225. So could I grab a mover and seconder for this policy? Councillor Smith is moving, and could I grab a seconder? Councillor Herridge. Fantastic. And we'll open up to questions from the committee. Any questions from anyone? Councillor Herridge.
Thank you. The question I was referring to is in the report on page 223. It says the removal of any references to internal administration documents. So is that something that should be across all policies, or is it just a reference to this particular one?
General Counsel.
Thank you for the question. That will be happening across all the policies with the administration document references being removed.
Councillor Herridge?
Because we've just approved some with those documents in it.
Yep, so you go.
Thank you. I think this is in response to, I think the Chair may have raised this on a number of occasions with different documents that go to Council that make reference to a management policy, and then the councillor saying, well, we want to see that policy or whatever the case may be. So I guess across the business, we are starting to make a conscious decision. It's probably going to take some time to bed in across the whole business, but you know, I think we'll try that approach because it probably just adds a fair bit of confusion out there in the community when they see reference to another document when it's an internal document they don't necessarily have access to. So you may see a couple of references in documents tonight, but as time goes by, we'll try and tidy that up.
Thank you, Councillor Herridge. That has been noted for those other items, so when they are time for review. And yes, Councillor Herridge.
Thank you. I'll find the right page for you. So 229, which is the marked up version. I noticed that in the implementation, we've got placing of a media notice. Should we update that and make that socials as well?
Which clause are you looking at?
Implementation, which is clause 6. So I'm on the marked up 229. Which will be
So,
page 232 of the clean version.
with the consent of the mover and seconder being Councillor Smith and Councillor Herridge, are you both happy to make those changes on page 229? Let me go to the clean version. Page 232 for the first dot point under the implementation section, where it finishes placing of a media notice and social media. Councillor Smith, are you happy with that?
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
So on page 232, the first dot point, placing of a media notice and social media, if appropriate.
Fine with that, thanks.
Fantastic. And Councillor Herridge?
Yep, I did have another one. Just wondering whether the civic events policy is also a relevant document to this policy and should be listed with the reconciliation plan.
General Counsel?
My reasoning was because this policy isn't for the calling of a memorial event per se. The civic policy is.
Thank you for the question. Yes, on that point, it would be interrelated and we can add it into here.
Yep, Councillor Herridge.
And just one last one, sorry. I needed to check. Do we have free men or free man of the City of Wanneroo? Because we've used both within both different policies tonight, within 510 and 511.
The administration's provided it should be Freeman. So the administration will take that as a spelling error and they will be updated. Is there any other questions from the committee on this policy? Anybody online? No indication. So the recommendation as amended, and sorry, committee members, but the administration also has those replacement pages on page 228 and 231, which is in your folders. So I will give you a minute to consider those just to make sure that you understand those changes as well. Yep, fantastic. Okay, so Councillor Smith, did you have any comments?
Sorry, Chair. I just wanted to ask the question why the bereavement recognition policy would come under governance and legal. Is it a legal issue?
General Counsel.
Thank you for the question. Just in the restructure of the team, so council services now comes under legal and governance services, so that's the reason why. So we're one service unit.
Thank you, Ms Coles. All right, so Councillor Smith, any comments on that item? No. And Councillor Herridge? Fantastic. So we will go to the recommendation on page 225 with as amended. So we'll go to the vote on that item. Councillor Seif? Councillor Seif, it looks like you've frozen. There we go. Yep, fantastic. We see you again, Councillor Seif. So what was your vote indication?
Okay, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Councillor Seif. So that is carried unanimously. All righty, so we move on to item 5.11, which is our last item on the agenda, conferral of the honour of keys to the city policy, which starts on page 234, and the recommendation is on page 235. And just noting the administration has provided some replacement pages in your folder, pages 240, 242, 243, 244, 246 and 247. So I'll give a minute for councillors to consider that, and then we will grab a mover and seconder. Councillor Huntley, you had your card raised.
Yeah. Just a quick question on that.
Just before we go to that, Councillor Huntley, I'll grab a mover and seconder first. So I'm just giving some councillors some time to consider those replacement pages. And then I've got you first on my list, Councillor Huntley.
Okay.
So I will grab a mover for that item. Could I have a mover? Councillor Herridge, and a seconder, Councillor Parker. Fantastic. And Councillor Huntley. You had a question, Councillor Huntley?
We have, at the moment, we have a limitation on holders of the keys to the city, which is on the council policy on page 242, which I don't think is one of the ones included in the new pages. And it just says that we're going to move it from really 4 people to 8. I just wonder whether we should word it for the next couple of years to up to 15, because we have no one apart from one person. And so maybe we should say, rather than at any one time, to a maximum of 15 or up to 15, take the word maximum away and put up to 15 living persons.
So what I'll do, Councillor Huntley, is just following procedure tonight, just so we are consistent. I will ask the mover and seconder if they do consent. If they don't, you will need a seconder to raise that as an amendment. So I will go to Councillor Herridge first. Is that something you wish to incorporate as the mover?
I wouldn't, only because I did go back to our forum notes and I printed off. So with your indulgence, can I just go through what we discussed at the time? Council members who expressed an opinion tended towards either increasing or doing away entirely with the current 4-person limit. It was noted that equivalent policies at neighbouring local authorities frequently do not specify a limit. An 8-person limit appeared to be the best supported option. Administration emphasised the importance of keeping the honour exclusive - rare to avoid devaluing it.
Thank you, Councillor Herridge. So as the mover hasn't consented to that, you will have to raise a formal amendment if you wish to do so. Is that something you would like to do, Councillor Huntley, or are you happy now hearing what Councillor Herridge has provided the committee?
Move an amendment, because we did actually say that we either should leave it open and we shouldn't have any numbers on there, or if we do limit it, that it should be a higher number. There are times that if we have a couple then technically they're classed as one, or are they classed as two? So, you know, eight could actually mean 4 keys to the city, and then we can't have anyone else. So I just don't think we should limit this at this stage.
Thank you, Councillor Huntley. Just before I ask for a seconder for that, Councillor Parker had a question.
Thank you, Chair. Also at number 10, under evaluation, the policy is to be reviewed every 2 years, but may be reviewed at any other time. So I think that 8, as Councillor Herridge was saying, and the fact that it can be reviewed at any time or every 2 years should suffice. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. So, Councillor Huntley, as you raised an amendment, is there a seconder for that amendment? So, Councillor Huntley, would you be able to read out your amendment or what proposed wording you wish to propose?
People and
So-
just put.
Sorry, Councillor Huntley, could you repeat that again? And I'm referring to page 246, which is the clean version of the report.
Oh, 246. Okay, hang on. Go to 246. Right, at any one time, a maximum of 8 living persons. So at any one time, up to 15 living persons.
So
Remove
just clarifying for the committee, so on page 246, clause 6.4a, at any one time, up to 15 living persons only may be designated the title holder of the keys to the City of Wanneroo. So that's the amendment. I need a seconder for that amendment for it to be considered as a formal amendment to the committee. Yeah. So Councillor Miles is seconding that amendment. So Councillor Huntley, I will give you the speech to make to the committee if you wish to do so.
If you actually look at the limitation of holders for the key to the city, it does. This doesn't state that we can nominate or promote 8 people a year. This actually states that there will be a maximum of 8 living persons only may be designated the title holder, keys to the city. A lot of the times we are nominating people who are in their 80s and 90s, and these, if we have 80 and 90-year-olds who pass away, one, it's a token effort, but if we have younger people, they may live on, and ultimately then they'll block up the 8 very quickly, and we won't be able to nominate anybody else into it until we reduce those numbers or we raise the numbers again. So I think we need to look at this. This isn't a per year, this is a total. So it's really important that we do make sure that we have enough to really make this award something so that we can actually see people out in the community who actually hold these keys. So I think 15 is really is quite low. I know some councils have up to 20 people on their keys to the city list, but you know, at the moment I think we have two or three. So I know we have space to get to 8, but I think there are a lot more people than 8 deserving of this award. So I would like you to consider whether we do raise this up and support a motion just to change those figures. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huntley. Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Why I'm supporting this is very similar lines to Councillor Huntley. I think, you know, for so many years we've only had the 4 pioneers. In actual fact, before we got our 4th pioneer, we only had 3 because that's what the policy stated. And for some, you know, 15 odd years, they only had the 3 until the council decided to add Mr. Edwards as the 4th one. I do believe, because we're trying to establish the keys to the city as our new designated, you know, honorary position, I do believe that we can afford to add to the 15. And I also do agree with Councillor Huntley that if you have somebody that may have gone over to do the Olympics or anything like that, we should be giving them, if they live in our area, a key to the city because of what they've done and what they can obviously show a lot of school children and that in the area of where they've been and where they're going. So I'm very happy to have the 15 as an initial number. And as Councillor Parker indicated, this is going to be reviewed in 2 years anyway. So I'm quite comfortable to do the initial 15. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. So I will open up to anyone that is against the amendment. Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair. I think very simply from our point of view, and I know this was a discussion that we had at Forum, I do believe that it would diminish the status of the conferral. Is if, as Councillor Miles has said, there is somebody that is an exception, we can review it before the 2 years is up. So I'm quite comfortable that with item 10 in place on the policy, if something does come up, it comes to council, we can discuss it and we can go from there. As Councillor Miles also rightly said, we've never had 8. So to all of a sudden jump to 15 without really giving it a strong look, to me is being, I just think we're just going a bit overboard. But item 10 certainly clarifies anything that we can come back, rediscuss. So I'm happy with the policy as is. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Councillor Smith speaking for.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of our population being approximately 215,000 people in the city, I think having the ability of being able to have up to 15 still is able to retain, I guess, the specialness of the award. We don't necessarily need to do all 15, it's just giving us that option. And this relates to a future amendment that I'm going to put towards, which is looking at the obligation that you have to live in the city for 20 years. So I'll speak further to that one later on, but going back to what Councillor Huntley said in terms of if we have people of a younger age over the course, when we want to nominate new people over the course of the years, that will naturally build up the number there. So with that in foresight and what I've said before, I am happy to support this motion. Thank you. Or the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Speaking against, Councillor Herridge. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. Just along the lines, I absolutely hear what you're saying with the 15. I think the 15 is a number that we've plucked out of somewhere, so I'm not sure exactly why we went 15 rather than 10 or 12. But the eligibility criteria of this specific policy is for existing freemen and holder of the keys. So if we did go ahead, in my mind, and change this policy to anything to diminish that, that would diminish their achievements. If we were going to do anything different, and because Councillor Miles did just mention people that have come back with the Olympics and awards and things like that, I think we could actually come up with something else that's different and actually make it more specific. So it's not necessarily a holder of the keys, but it could be a different policy entirely for itself. So we can keep what we have for our pioneers and then have something separate. So yeah, I think what we have is good. I still have a couple of other things to question, but for this amendment, I'm a no.
Thank you, Councillor Herridge. Is there anyone that would like to speak for or against for this amendment? Anybody online? No? No indication from anyone else. So I will go to a right of reply. Councillor Huntley, would you like to exercise that right of reply as the mover? You're on mute, Councillor Huntley.
I think Councillor Sarif had a question.
Councillor Seif?
Thank you, Chair. It was just a comment that I support the increasing in numbers. I think we're such a large city very quickly, and I would support the increase.
Thank you, Councillor Seif. I'll take that as a in support of the amendment. All right, if there's no further for or against, and Councillor Huntley, would you like to exercise that right of reply? No. So we will go to the vote on the amendment. So the amendment is for page 246, clause 6.4a, at any one time, up to 15 living persons only may be designated to title holder of the keys to the City of Wanneroo. Did everyone from the committee understand that? Fantastic. So we'll go to the vote on the amendment. So that is carried 6-2, and the councillors against was Councillor Parker and Councillor Herridge. So that item is carried, and we are now back to the substantive as amended. Was there any councillors that had any questions on the substantive as amended? Councillor Herridge, and then I've got Councillor Smith.
Have you got the little one?
Sorry, Jackie. Sorry, Councillor Huntley, if you could please mute yourself.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Herridge.
Thank you, Chair. I just had a couple of things to clarify. Again, I went back to our notes from the forum, and I did notice that there were a couple of things that weren't picked up and changed in here. 6.2, which is the nomination procedure. So I was looking at the marked up, which is page 241, but if we want the clean version, it's page 245. We did at the time have a discussion about the consensus on what we would have as a nomination procedure, and at the time we weren't happy that it was just one councillor, and we did discuss it being a third or a certain number of councillors that had to come together as a group. So I just wanted to make that note.
Was there anyone from the administration that wanted to provide a comment on that? Yes, Manager of Corporate and Council Support. Acting Manager, sorry.
Thank you, and through the chair. I do have my notes that item was discussed. I did not have noted that there was a consensus on a specific standard for nomination, but that can certainly be added if the committee wants to craft one.
Councillor Herridge.
Would the committee like to craft one with me?
So Councillor Marzi is seconding that? No.
No, actually, I wanted to ask a question about it first from
Yes.
an administration point of view. But if you've got an amendment on the go, okay, do you want to do your words while I yap?
So just noting, I'm sorry, Councillor Miles, before you ask your question, just noting that there is only a maximum of 2 amendments on any per item, and I know Councillor Smith also raised and flagged one before. So I am happy to take 5 minutes if you do want a workshop in one amendment. If there is some changes, it's up to you, noting that there's only going to be one amendment that is remaining for this item.
I just have a question with regard
Councillor Miles, you can have your question while...
Thank you. With 6.2, and I guess it's more along the lines of the process. So it says here, nominations must be made in the strictest confidence without the nominee's knowledge, I understand. Nominee acceptance of the honour to be confirmed prior to any public announcement. Any resident or elector of the City of Wanneroo may make a nomination, but must be sponsored by a council member. I have no problem with that. So there is a councillor involved in the external one. And I think what D is saying is that I guess a councillor can nominate somebody, and the CEO is also that second person to see that one. Is that how I'm reading D? So the CEO can sort of, I wouldn't say support it, but obviously will have to support it, yes.
Mr. CEO.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for the questions, Councillor Miles. Putting it to me is just for me to take action. So once I've received it, then I can commence a process of drafting, a report to council and those sorts of things. So I'm not involved in the support or anything else. It's simply like most correspondence that's directed to the city. It comes to me as the chief executive officer, as I'm the one that can action things.
Councillor Miles, any further points, clarification?
No, I am happy with the with 6.2 because it is clear that whatever happens, it's going to come to a closed meeting of the OCM for ratification, regardless, and it's providing that it meets the policy. The OCM can then obviously deliberate and then make its decision from that point of view. So I am comfortable with 6.2.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. So I had Councillor Smith. Did you have questions, Councillor Smith, first, or would you need 5 minutes from the committee? We're doing okay for time tonight, guys.
Can we have? Because I've got a couple of other things as well that it probably would be good if we could have a quick workshop.
So we'll do a 10-minute comfort break. So I will need a mover and seconder for that. So Councillor Herridge and Councillor Smith, and we will go to the vote on a 10-minute comfort break. So that should be on your screens now. Who are we waiting on? Yep, that's everyone. So that's carried unanimously. The meeting will resume at 8 o'clock. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, councillors. So we will reopen the meeting at 8:01 p.m. And I believe we had another amendment. Who was the mover of that amendment? Councillor Herridge? And did you have a seconder for that amendment? So we had a mover, Councillor Herridge, and a seconder, Councillor Smith. Would you like to read that out, or whether the administration has it on the screen, either?
Admin should have it on the screen for us.
Councillor Seif, you had a question?
Thank you, Chair. No, I just want to say that I can't see what's on the screen.
It hasn't popped on the screen just yet.
Yeah, just when it does, I'll still need someone to read it out, if you don't mind.
No problems. Thank you, Councillor Seif.
Do you want me to speak to it while we're waiting?
I'll just wait for the words to come up, just so it's clear for Councillor Seif and Councillor Coetzee, because they're on their mobile phones, so they may not be able to see the screen sharing properly. So that is on the screen, councillors. So I am just reading that out for everyone. And Councillor Coetzee and Councillor Seif, if you are still unsure, let me know, and I'll get the administration to copy that into the Microsoft Teams chat. So it is to add to clause 6.2c on page 245. And that will read, to add to clause 6.2c, must be sponsored by a minimum of 2 council members. Did you need me to repeat that again, Councillor Seif and Councillor Coetzee? Councillor Coetzee, sorry.
Yes, please repeat it again.
Yep. So it's to add to clause 6.2c, must be sponsored by a minimum of 2 council members. So it's adding of the words a minimum of 2. Not taking any words out, I believe. Councillor Herridge?
Can I just make a clarification? I did move the substantive, so maybe Councillor Miles might like to move the item.
So the substantive that I had is Councillor Herridge and Councillor Parker as the seconder for the substantive as amended now. So if you would like, with the consent of Councillor Parker, we can incorporate it into the substantive. Yep. Okay. So there is no longer an amendment. It is now incorporated into the substantive as amended. Does everyone understand that? Everybody online? I can't see. Councillor Huntley?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We haven't voted on this yet, have we?
No, Councillor Huntley. So what we've done is we've done the amendment, which was your amendment with Councillor Miles, that has passed. Now that forms as part of the as substantive as amended. And now we are considering now we are considering the substantive as amended for the second time, which is to add the words a minimum of two to clause 6.2c. So the vote that we'll be considering now will be the final vote on the main substantive as amended, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I have a question, and that is, before it was always one council member. I think I'm a little bit worried about taking it to two council members because our ward structure is going to be so dynamic in the future. To have two councillors who know the same person as well as each other is probably, I think we're making a token effort here of two council. I think we should just be one council member. So my question is, why would we want, or why is there such a difference between one and two council members?
So, Councillor Huntley, what I will do, sorry, I'll just pause for a minute. So what I will do, Councillor Huntley, before that question, I will afford the opportunity to the mover and seconder if they wish to speak to the item, where they can incorporate those additional comments. And then if Councillor Huntley's question is not answered, you're more than welcome to raise that with me, and I will go back to that to be answered by the administration, or if a council member wishes to answer that question. So I will go to the mover first, Councillor Herridge.
So this is me moving.
Yes, so you're most welcome to speak to the item, moving that additional.
Yep, sure, no problem. I think this is quite timely and it's an awesome amendment to make what we've been doing tonight. This additional one to sponsor by a minimum of two council members goes along the lines of what we have discussed in the past. It helps us keep each other accountable. So if there is, we've now looked at doing the 15, but it does help us keep each other accountable, that we're not just putting random people across, that they do actually fit the criteria. So that was the intent of putting the minimum of two above for the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Herridge. And Councillor Parker, did you want to speak as the seconder as amended?
No, absolutely agree with Councillor Herridge's reasoning. I just think as you said, one person putting a person up just opens that councillor, I think, in fact, up to scrutiny, which I don't think is actually fair. So having a second person that you can have a chat with and make sure that this is what you want to do, even if I, for example, don't know the person, Councillor Herridge could come to me and say, this is why, and put up the reasoning, and just having that I think to present to council is a far better way of going. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Councillor Huntley, was your question addressed? If not, feel free to re-ask it again.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair. The issue I have here is that obviously if you nominate someone, it goes through a process. So my question is, the process will obviously go to a committee and it will be the committee who decide, and the research will be done at that point. So whether there is one councillor or two councillors, it will make no difference. Is that correct?
CEO.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Huntley. As per the policy sort of states at the moment, that it currently says supported by one councillor, and that would come through to myself. And basically from that point in time, we would then prepare the report that would go to council for consideration. So there's no committee as such that determines these outcomes. It's made by the full council.
Fantastic.
Councillor Huntley?
Ultimately, what we do have to be careful of is that the community themselves can actually nominate someone for this. Is that correct? But they just need to find a councillor to help them with their nomination and bring it forward. Is that correct?
CEO?
Yes, that is correct. And this particular updated motion that's before you now seeks to increase that from 1 to 2 council members.
Are we complicating the community's ability to be able to nominate people by now having to find 2 councillors?
CEO?
I'm not able to answer that on behalf of the community. I'm assuming that in practice it would look like somebody approaching a councillor and then potentially a councillor seeking another councillor to endorse the application. I'm not sure whether it would be up to the individual community members, but in that instance, you may find that a community member goes and gathers support from a couple of different elected members prior to submitting the application. At the end of the day, you're going to need the support of a majority of council. So operationally, from my perspective, whether it's 1 or 2, you're going to need the support of a majority to get the person endorsed in any case.
Yeah, so to up it to 2 may be really complicating the whole issue. I do feel perhaps we should stay at 1 and leave it alone. But,
I'll take that. I'll take that as a statement. But I will. Is there any other questions before we go to debate, Councillor Miles?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a pity we couldn't have the whole clause up there. So the way I'm reading it, 6.2C, it says any resident or elector of the City of Wanneroo may make a nomination, but it must be sponsored by a minimum of 2 council members. Is that the new wording that we're looking at?
That's correct, Councillor Miles.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Seif, question?
Thank you, Chair. Yes. So,
Sorry,
If
Councillor
we're
Seif, are you
against
able to
it having to be
ask
2
that question
councillors-
again? Because you did cut out.
Sure. Am I clear now?
Just try
Can you
that
hear
again.
me well now?
Yes?
Is that better?
Yes, Councillor Seif?
Okay.
Well, you've
now
just
that
cut out
the,
again.
Oh no. If we don't want to vote for the change to 2, then we need to vote down the substantive. Is that correct? So for the substantive prior to it being changed from 1 councillor to 2, we now need to vote down the substantive.
Correct. Yep, Councillor Seif.
So, okay, maybe it's just a comment. I want to have a change to 2 councillors be voted on separately, but I understand that the mover and seconder.
Sorry, Councillor Seif, you've gone really quiet. Are you able to repeat that? Okay, no problems, Councillor Seif. I'll take that as a comment. So is there any further questions before we go to debate on the substantive as amended? No indication from everyone. So as the mover and seconder have already spoken to the item, is there anyone speaking against the substantive as amended? Councillor Huntley, speaking against?
Against, I think we will be complicating the issue for the residents, and we've already seen after the recent awards that we did, the community didn't even put somebody up for a nomination because I think the process is getting so complicated. I think, you know, they should approach a councillor because obviously the councillor is going to help them with their application and making sure that they get the process done correctly. But to have 2 councillors on board or to go and rally up councillors, I just think it will make it too hard. The majority of the community don't even know who councillors are. So I think really to have 2 councillors involved in this is a community award, and that's where it should stay. And for us, it should just be one of us to help them get the nomination through. And then ultimately it is for us as a committee or as a council to then approve whether that nomination will go forth or not. And hopefully there'll be lots of nominations. So there's only 14 of us. If we're doubling up, it's going to be crazy. We're all going to land up with 2 people each or 3 or whatever. It's going to be nuts. So 1 councillor is probably quite enough. Please, let's leave it as it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huntley. Is there a councillor that is willing to speak for the item? Councillor Miles?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look, I'm happy with the proposed, the substantive as it is now being delivered by the mover and seconder. I think it articulates a bit of safety to make sure that 2 of our fellow councillors are part of that nomination process before it actually becomes something that goes to the CEO and then obviously to a closed meeting. I think it gives us a level of assurity that a couple of councillors have obviously looked at the application before it goes to the CEO, before he spends any resources on that application. So I'm very comfortable with the position that's been presented by the mover and seconder. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Is there anyone speaking against the item? No indication. Is there anyone that would like to speak for the item? No indication. So we'll go to the vote on that item as amended. So that is, just for clarity, page 245, 6.2C. And that reads now as the clause with the addition of must be sponsored by a minimum of 2 council members. Councillor Herridge?
Just one question, if I can. I did wait to the end for everybody. The related documents, can we consider adding the civic events policy for the reasons we used earlier?
I see General Counsel writing that down, so that's been noted. All right, we will go to the vote now. Oh, sorry, councillors. Right of reply, because there was debate. Did you want to?
That's my right of reply.
Thank you, Councillor Herridge. So voting should be on your screens now. So that has been carried 7-1, and the councillor against was Councillor Huntley. So that has now passed. So we now move to item 6 to be tabled. We have nil. Item 7, urgent business, we have nil. Item 8, date of the next meeting. So the next policy review committee meeting has been scheduled for 6 p.m. on Monday, the 30th of June, 2025, to be held in the council chambers, Civic Centre, 23 Dundebar Road, Wanneroo. And I now formally close the meeting at 8:19 p.m. Thank you, councillors.